Andi Peters. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you very much indeed, Jordan. Yourself, I'm sure, feeling sprightly.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing this. 'Cause
No worries.
I know you've got a super busy schedule.
It's a pleasure.
I would have given you a much more impressive intro there, but obviously time's against us, isn't it?
Always. That's life in general.
Absolutely. So I suppose we better start off at the beginning then. How did you start your career then? What really got your sort of passion for broadcasting and entertainment?
Well, broadcasting really, much like you, I started in radio. I worked in a shop in Top Man and Top Shop Oxford Circus in London, and they had a radio station that was a radio station played to all the Top Shops and Top Mans on Oxford Street, of which there were 5, and then also played to the big flagships around the country, so Newcastle, Birmingham, Glasgow, Manchester. And I worked in the shop and would listen to this radio station for my entire sort of 10-hour shift, and then went downstairs and used to talk to the DJs in the studio, and then eventually they said, do you want to be a DJ? And I said, well, actually, I'd give it a go, and they let me practice in their second studio. And I used to practice, and then eventually one day they said, you know what, we think you're really good, you can have a job. And I worked there, and that became my Saturday job. And whilst doing that as a Saturday job, a TV producer came in and said she was listening to me and thought I was really funny. She was with her daughter, and she said, if you ever want to get to television, get in touch with me. And back then, in the prehistoric times, there wasn't email, there weren't even faxes back then. So I took a picture in a photo booth in Oxford Circus Station and sent it to her. And lo and behold, she said, actually, we're looking for a presenter. Come and have a go at presenting. So I did, and she gave me a job on my 18th birthday.
Wow. Because I was looking into your career and, doing a bit of research beforehand. Yeah. And your rise was really quick, wasn't it, once it got going?
I think I was very lucky. This is 1988, and 88 and 89, and it was the fact that somebody at the BBC, so my first show on ITV was a kids show called Free Time. It was only 14 episodes long, so 14 weeks recorded episodes, and somebody at the BBC spotted me and said, we really like you, would you like to come and work for us? And this was all new to me. I was at school, I'd just finished school. I had to finish school to do this. So I said, okay, I will, and I left and did that and really enjoyed it.
Wow, because you obviously presented in the Broom Cupboard early on, didn't you?
Yeah, that was my second job.
Right, and what was that like early on in your career to have that opportunity?
Well, again, when I joined Children's BBC from ITV, so my first job was ITV for pretty much 6 months, and when I joined the BBC, obviously I'd watched the Broom Cupboard, I'd watched Philip in the Broom Cupboard, I'd watched Andy Crane in the Broom Cupboard, and I thought, well, actually, obviously that would be miles away, and the week after I arrived, they said, we're going to put you on the Broom Cupboard for a week and see what you're like. And that was huge. I mean, in those days, I was broadcasting television to 12 million people. Not even Strictly Come Dancing gets 12 million people now.
Wow.
Excuse me. So I'd say it was nerve-wracking, but people often say, do you get nervous? You never get nervous in the studio because all I'm talking to is a piece of glass. I'm literally talking to a Sony camera which has got a piece of glass, and that's what I have to look into and imagine the people at home. But one never imagines 12 million people. You just hope that there's somebody watching and somebody enjoying the show.
Was there somebody early on, Andy, that really gave you a useful bit of advice that you've really gone back to sometimes?
It was my boss at Radio Top Shop. He always said, you work hard, you'll always yield results. And when you get knocked back, get back up. His phrase was always, if you get knocked down 6 times, get up 7 times.
That's very good, isn't it? And then I sort of remember you from Live and Kicking days, of course, but completely different challenge, I would imagine. Did it just feel like a natural progression at that point after you've done a few years elsewhere?
I think the Broom Cupboard training that was the best training for a show like Live and Kicking, because you have to think on your feet, you have to talk endlessly about nothing for a long time, and stop talking when the producers want you to stop talking, invariably at a certain given time. So with that in mind, you just have to make sure that you're doing everything right. And again, a show like Live and Kicking, which had a huge history with the BBC, it's been on for many, 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 many years, in different guises, going live, Saturday Superstore, Swap Shop. So pretty much the same show, but in different versions. So it was always a dream to do one of those shows, to be fair, because ultimately, they're once-in-a-lifetime opportunities.
Of course, yeah. I'm interested to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, in the sort of 90s, kids shows were booming, weren't they? They were, as you say, they were getting so many viewers tuning in every week or every weekend. And with sort of the advent of streaming services and the changes that's happened in that time, do you think that kids' TV as a medium could potentially get back to those levels?
I think that now we've gone to a world where the streaming, etc., is just as important. Streaming is the way that people consume television now. That's just the way it is. People watch television through streaming platforms or dedicated channels. So, of course, Children's BBC has a dedicated channel where viewers can find children for young people. So, as much as television has segregated slightly, it's still the idea of having children's television and quality programming like that does still exist. And I'm really proud that in the era that I worked in on children's television, it really was something quite special.
And I suppose it was a time as well where in certain kids' TV shows you was able to sort of push the boundaries a little bit, weren't you, in terms of like creatively, I mean?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I think ultimately we really did. And we did stuff that people had never done before. We did things that you wouldn't do nowadays. Gunging people. I'm not sure you'd be allowed to gunge people nowadays.
No, you probably wouldn't.
Which is a real shame. But that's, there was a program on ITV called Tiswas, and they used to put custard pies in people's faces. I mean, the show was hilarious. But again, I don't know whether you'd be allowed to do that now. So these things have changed, and we do things in a different way now. So I think it's not to say the heyday has gone, but certainly I think we make television in a different way now.
And I mean, when you look back as well, so many established presenters came through the kids' TV system, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's a great training ground. Children's television was a great training ground because, again, there was lots of it, as in lots of airtime that needed filling, and you would just get it done. That's all. You used to have to. That was the way we do it. We go, right, okay, we've got 2 minutes to fill. What are you going to fill with? Which is why DJs often made good presenters, because they're used to just talking.
Which of the presenters that you came up with did you know instantly was destined for success?
Zoe Ball. I always knew from the minute I met Zoe Ball, I thought she'd be a star. Always, always, always.
From like the first day or
first month? From the first time I met her. From her audition, I knew she'd be very successful. And so she did some children's television. And obviously Ben Shepherd, who did T4, again, really great. Really, from the day I did his audition, I thought, actually, he's going to be a star. And I think it's a quality, excuse me, I think it's a quality that you can see in people right away. You can just see it. They have it. Some people, and I don't think you can teach. I think you can teach someone to be competent in presenting. That's I can teach you. Right, look, when someone gets to 0, you've got to stop talking. I can teach you that. I can't teach you to bring personality or to bring your own magic to something. I can't teach you that.
It's that it factor.
Yeah, it really is the X factor.
And you mentioned T4 there, which I never knew until recently. You were sort of the creative force behind that.
Sort of. I was.
Well, you was then. You was. I didn't want to say with absolute certainty because I don't always necessarily trust everything Google tells me. So,
nor should you ever.
So I was a bit like, do I go all the way here?
Yeah. No, I did create T4 and a lot of the shows within it.
What made you want to create T4 at the time? Was there something you were just watching from afar and went, right, I've got the seed of an idea here, and this is what it could be?
When I joined Channel 4 as a commissioning editor, in a role as a manager, for want of a better word, I basically was looking at the schedule, thinking, Channel 4. Imagine if you buy 10 cans of baked beans. They sit in the fridge, and eventually they don't sit in the fridge. They sit in the cupboard, and eventually they go out of date. The same thing happens with TV shows. So you buy 20 episodes of Dawson's Creek, but if you don't show them by a certain time, you're not allowed to show them anymore. And Channel 4 had a cupboard full of lots of television programs that were, for want of a better expression, going out of date. And so we needed somewhere to show them. So I said, look, why don't I find a time of day? Again, we call it a day part. Let me find a day part where I can run some of these shows. And the day part I chose was Sunday mornings. And I just went to my boss and said, look, at the moment you're running this show called The Waltons. I reckon that if I put this show, that show, and this show there, we'll get better viewing figures than The Waltons. And he said, okay, give it a go.
A lot of the presenters that were on that show then, did you have a say in every one? Or
Yes, I did.
How did you find, because now you've got Dermot O'Leary's a household name, Vernon Kay, there's so many.
Yeah, June Sarpong, Margarita Taylor.
Yeah, how did you
Lemon,
find those? Oh, Keith
Ben
Lemon,
Shepherd.
Of course.
Yeah, he's mine. Ben Shepherd, Makita Oliver, Simon Amstell. Those are the ones I can remember.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of them.
How did you go about the process of finding these presenters?
I just always held auditions, and again, this is years ago. People would write in and say, "I want to be a TV presenter. Here's my showreel." And I'd watch a showreel, and again, I truly believe you see it quite quickly. If I would see a glimmer of hope in that person, I would say, "Right, let's get them in for an interview."
Right. And how quickly did some of these presenters, like we mentioned, make your mind up and go, "Right, you're the one"? Was it minutes, seconds?
I think you can tell. I think I can tell if someone's going to be a great presenter within 10 minutes.
What do you think then really makes a good presenter?
Someone who's engaging, someone who is self-deprecating, someone who listens before they talk, and ultimately can keep you engaged.
What words of advice would you give anyone looking to get into TV and radio?
Ultimately, you've got to be yourself. You've got to be who you are. So the person I speak to on the phone needs to be the person I speak to, on the street. You need to pretty much be the same person. I need to feel that I'm talking to the same person. And actually, that you're happy to give a bit of you to the audience so that we can get to know who you are. And authenticity. Just be you. People come in trying to be. The interesting thing is when you talk to actors, actors, when they come to be presenters, they act the part of being a presenter, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's pointless because I want the presenter to be a presenter. You see what I mean?
Of course I do, yeah.
Yeah.
And would you say presenting has changed in terms of, since sort of the 80s and 90s, we've got a lot more different ways of viewing content now, haven't we? But would you think the essence is always going to be the same?
Yes. It's always going to be, you want a face, you want somebody that you know and enjoy their company, that you're happy to invite into your house, to sit in the corner of your living room and talk. It's like having a guest. And I always say, the thing to remember is, as a TV presenter, I'm a guest in your house, and I must always respect that.
What was the best learning on the job experience you had presenting live TV or anything like that? Was there one moment that you think back and go, I didn't realise it at the time, but that has really stood me in good stead then to be as successful as you have been?
I think, I came through the children's BBC world, and it was very much you're by yourself. It's a very small team. You have to learn to multitask and help others and, to get the job done. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's what we used to have to do.
What's been the proudest moment of your career then, Andy?
I'd say T4.
T4.
Creating T4, without a shadow of a doubt. It's something that made a huge difference to television, and it was new. And that to me it'll never go away. It was something that was so new and never been done before, and creating first is really something special. And
obviously you've also done a lot of producing work in your time. Was that just a natural fit as well for you, or did you find one more difficult than the other?
No, I don't. Oh, that's an interesting one. They both carry different qualities, different aims, different. When you're a TV presenter, you don't take your work home with you, because you go home, you're not presenting a TV show anymore. You're going home.
Yeah.
When you're a TV producer, you take the work home with you. But when you're a TV producer, if you haven't been on the television and you're not well known to the audience, when you're in Marks and Spencer, no one knows who you are. They don't know that you produce Deal or No Deal, that you're the banker from Deal or No Deal. Nobody knows. So you get on with your day. Whereas when you're a TV presenter, when you go shopping, people will stop you and talk to you and say hello, etc., etc. So they both have different pluses and minuses.
You have had some really interesting experiences, and I was only recently watching you this morning, actually. And you're always going somewhere or other, aren't you? Doing bits and pieces. What's been the sort of the best place you've been lucky enough to visit with work?
Maldives. The Maldives. I'd never been to the Maldives. We've all seen pictures of the Maldives. The Maldives are exactly as you expect the Maldives to be. They deliver on every level, every single level. So, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, it's the Maldives.
And now, maybe you can tell me if this bit is correct. Did you give media training to the Spice Girls and Westlife?
I mean, this is an interesting question. Yes, I did. All those, and other bands as well. You know, and it's
JLS, I think, was one of them.
Yeah, they're mine as well. I say mine. You know, people that are on my list of people I've media trained.
What was the key thing you would instruct them to do?
I can't give away the trade secrets, otherwise bands wouldn't hire me anymore.
Well, what's the one thing you would say? Right, okay, don't do that. Or is it just careful what you say, careful how you come across?
I mean, this is a great way to draw to a close, I suppose. Yeah. My top tips in being a presenter, being a pop star, or being anyone that has to talk to people who, you know, might know you, like you, watch you, invest, buy your records. Yeah. Don't chew chewing gum and don't point.
Right. And really, really quickly, secrets to your success.
I don't see myself as successful. I see myself as somebody that just does their job, loves their job, and hopes that people love what I do. So I think in any job, do the best you can, because that's all you can do. And if you give everything your best and you're a nice person with it, then hopefully you'll be successful. Hopefully you'll do well.
And final minute or so, I've got to ask you this. You had a small part in Toy Story 2, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Hold it! There's a couple more bags coming from the terminal. I should have got an Oscar. You
should have done. Well, thank you, Andy. You've really given me a lot there. And hopefully one day, maybe down the line, we could maybe do a little bit of a longer one. I can ask you a few more questions. But it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Thank you. Cheers, Andy.